Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Alrighty, kids, this is the inaugural. This is the first video on the 2024 Sprueverse Challenge. And the Sprueverse Challenge this year is to build the Jaws Bruce the Mechanical Shark from Stannarts. The fine folks over at Stannarts have this kit available. If you want to, well, by the time you see this video, this is the video that will document my build of my particular version of this kit. It will be unveiled, or this will be posted post July 4th, because that's the end date for the contest. Today is the 19th of May. And I can say officially today I have started the project. I know that Wayne and Phil are, they're lapping me by now. They are miles ahead of me. I have not started this kit in earnest. I've picked it up, I've looked at the parts, I went, okay. But I haven't really done any serious building on it. That changes today. Today we are going to get started. Now the challenge, as I have interpreted it, we got together and said, okay, this is the model that we want to build, but we want to take a particular behind-the-scenes image and match our build to that image. And the reason is such is because this kit celebrates the fact that Bruce was a filming prop, and we want to use it as such. We want to show a little bit of the mystery and magic of movie making. And as for my particular image, I am recreating this, perhaps a not so glorious moment in the life of the mechanical shark, but it does typify that more times than not the shark wasn't working. This was in a, I wish I had my copy of the book out here right now. When Jaws came out, I was an impressionable teenager, as I'm sure most of you were. And as such, I was still, trying to figure out what am I going to do in life. And I got interested in the movie making business, the business of making movies. I was, happily spectating movies all of my childhood. But, about time I was 14, 15, about time Jaws came out, Jaws 75 or 76, I was figuring out I wanted to be an artist for a living. And luckily I was able to achieve that. Made a career as a graphic artist for 30 years. But getting into the behind the scenes of how movies were made, how TV was made, I was just starting to get interested in that kind of stuff back then. And as a matter of fact, let me go pick up that copy of the book. I'll be right back. Okay, here are the three most influential books of my youth at this time. Of course, the Bible, the Old Testament, the making of Star Trek. Now, this particular one, this particular copy is a 12th printing, May of 74. These ones are both copywritten in 75. This is a first printing in 75. This is the Edith Blake book. This was the one. Now, Carl Gottlieb also had a fine book, but Carl Gottlieb also was working on the screenplay. This is the fourth printing in 75. But Gottlieb was also in on the production of the movie, so I kind of take his stuff as maybe a little bit more rose-tinted glasses, because he was part of the crew. But the Edith Blake book was the thing that really sparked my interest in the making of Jaws, because as we all know, it was not smooth sailing. It was not a smooth production. And I thought this one probably did a better job of telling the warts and all of it. But there was a picture in the Edith Blake book that sparked my interest, and there it is. It's on page 166. It is that picture, platform, blah, 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 blah. Because, again, it shows that it isn't all you know, rainbows and unicorns to make a movie. There's some wonderful behind the scenes pictures of it. So that central image had stuck with me for quite a while. And of course, everybody knows Making of Star Trek. If you don't have a copy of that, you need to go get it. You need to go get one. I'll just say that. But so when it came to doing this pose or this Sprueverse challenge, I knew that is the pose that I wanted to recreate. It takes up precious little room to do it because, as we all know, room is premium. But B, it also allows me to experience the joy, the awe, the mystery, the wonder that is resin deep pour casting, because I didn't get in on the original Sprueverse challenge back when Wayne and Phil were making Hooper in the shark cage and pouring a lot of deep pour resin. I got to sneer at them from the sidelines and not have to experience that myself. But nay, I will be doing that this time because my job is going to be trying to recreate this pose. Already I'm working on the tower or the gantry or whatever you want to call it. I've drawn this out on the computer, and that's giving me my length and my side pieces. Each one of those horizontal lines is an inch apart. And now I can just build this to match. The 3-inch wheel will go at the top, and I need to cut the little half moon in there to allow that to happen. This is unfortunately stuck to the paper, so I just printed out another one, and I can build the other side. They will be parallel to each other at about an inch apart. Here we are at the end of the day, or at least the end of a few hours. It's been, about 3 hours since I started work on this. I made the side derrick. Now I've cut off the pieces from the sides of the original gear here, or the original flywheel here, and I've drilled a new hole. And what's going to happen is this is still the part that goes up into the shark. I can't mess with that because I need that important joint. I need that to relate exactly how it is. But what we're going to do is I've taken these little bits that used to be on the outsides here, cut those off. I thought I was going to have to remake those, but I was able to save the actual resin pieces. And the more of it I use that's, the actual kit, the happier I'm going to be, because, I want to be able to reuse as much as possible. This much goes into the fish. This sinks back over top of it like that. I put the new axle through it, and that much goes into the shark. It's going to be at an angle something like that. I can put these little braces back over the top to hold it down, and then all of this will get sunk down into the resin. And really at this point I could start building the rest of Bruce here, because I don't need, I can do everything except attach this flywheel. As long as I leave that space open, then when it sits like that, I can just attach that to the top of the new tower. Now you may be wondering if that's going to give it enough support, and I would say no, because right now everything is resting on these 2 points and this point right here. So when it sits like that, that's not really enough meat. But when you think about it's going to also be sitting in resin up to about here, that's going to give me the rest of my third point of the contact. Let's see if I do this. I'm trying to make sure I can keep all of this in camera. It's going to sit like that with, well, let me lay this back down on the floor or on the table so you can see it. Attach that like that, this like that. Okay, and by the time you put Bruce's face on there, so this is going to sit. Let me get it where I can see. There you go. This is going to sit with approximately everything below this point is going to be in resin. So that's going to give me my support because the rest of his face will be sitting in resin. I think we're doing good here. I think I've made this tall enough. The goal was that it would sit, let's say, maybe that much in the resin. So by the time you put his face on there, yeah, I think that's going to work. Well, I think I've made significant headway. On the Bruce Shark diorama, and going to be putting this aside now because this is a separate project, and I can't really have it in the background while I am working on my regular model build. So time to pack all this up for the week, I guess, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. Hello and welcome back. It is time to work on Bruce again, and I need to light a fire. I need to light a fire under myself because I am back from Wonderfest, and I have heard all of the tales of Phil and Wayne having theirs done already. And I saw a finished build at the show that looked very nice. So it has reinforced the fact that I need to get cracking. And the big news is I got my form. This is the form for the resin. So I was kind of waiting on that. I've lost that excuse now. But I was kind of waiting on that because I needed to make sure that this form was going to do what I needed it to do. So I have, you might see I've started some painting work on the internal structure here. I'll take this out. I need to start putting some of these pieces together. I'm going to end up doing a lot of the work as it is, not as it is curing, but once it is cured in the base, because there is going to be an amount of time that it's going to be like this has to cure for like days. So I need to make sure that I can cure it in place and then paint it once it's cured, because really there's no sense doing a lot of work on this if the curing screws up. So where I'm at right now is I've got the form. I've got the final dimensions on that, so I can take my shark and my gantry here, and I can see how it's going to look inside the base, and I can tell that yes, this is going to be big enough and deep enough. I was concerned that it was never going to be, there was never going to be enough resin height. I think we're okay on that. So what I need to do now is to put the final bevel on this, because I want it to sit at an angle. So it's not going to sit straight up. It's going to sit something like that. It's going to be canted at an angle. So I need to sand the front legs down, and I need to well, let me see if I do this. Let me get some tape, and I will tape the bits together, and hopefully you'll be able to tell. But what I'd like to do today possibly is go out and get the resin, and get the resin and the release agents and all that kind of stuff that I'm going to need, so that I can do the first pour. I think the first pour is going to be just enough to hold the gantry in place, and I won't attach the shark to that. I will just put the gantry in, and then as that sets up, we will be able to attach the shark to it. I don't need the tail. I don't need that bit. Again, let me see if I can do this so that you can see what's going on. That's how it's going to sit. Now it's going to sit with something like this in the resin. Is that visible on my screen? Let me see my viewfinder. It's going to sit like that with its nose down in the resin. So what we can do is do this much with the gantry, get that locked into place, and then attach the shark to it. I'm not going to be using the clear acrylic tubes to hold this up, because once this is sitting in here, I think that's going to take all of the weight. I'm going to do something, it's going to be sitting like that. I am going to do something to hold it in place while it cures, or while the resin is curing, but I'm not going to add any additional supports to it. Okay, I'm working on putting some color inside this beastie because I want to get it closed up today. This is Monday. I want to spend today working on Bruce, and then I can be letting it dry while I'm working on something else the rest of the week. Got the girder work done inside pretty much. Now there is a bank of servos that need to be attached from the inside here. They need to be attached from the back, so I got to put those in before I put the framework in. So I just want to get some dark paint on those, and I'll go back in and hit those with some accent color once the fish is closed up. There's a certain amount of this that's never going to be seen, and then there is an amount that is. So I'm kind of mapping out what I need to concern myself with, because not only is it this, but it's also pointed down like that. So how much of in here I'm going to see, that kind of matters. So I'm going to touch it with some color. I don't know that there's any reference for what color these jacks are. I'm just going to make them olive drab. I figured they would be sprayed out by a scenic artist that would be trying to camouflage everything in there. Once it was painted, or once it was put together, they probably would, spray paint them over a bunch, but you might see a flash of metal in these pistons here or there. So I might just do a little silver pass on some of those. But you're not going to necessarily, these aren't meant to be shown, so you would want to camouflage those as much as possible. And of course we've got this green and yellow girder work going on in here that's obvious in all of the pictures that I've seen, so that's where I'm kind of taking my cues from. There's yellows and what I would call the institutional green inside here. And those are probably marine paint colors, such that they would be able to stand up to the salt water that this would have to go under. So they would be, like I say, they would be marine paints. These jacks, I don't know how long they were anticipating having those work underwater, but everything was done with pneumatic hoses and everything was pumped hydraulic hoses. That's the word I was looking for, with hydraulic hoses, and for the gross movements of I'm imagining the head back and forth, and then the jaw up and down, and then a little bit of thrashing of the tail here. So they weren't really necessarily fine movements. They were just to get some life into the thing. So I am almost ready. I think I want to do a black pass on that, or a gunmetal pass on that, before I attach it in there. There's a certain amount of this I'm going to be able to still paint once everything is cured and sitting like this. What I'm trying to do now is get the larger areas and the areas that I won't be able to get to easily after it's put together. Those are the things I want to paint now. I hate to say it, it's very cynical, but I don't want to spend a lot of time painting something and then have this thing destroyed. If the resin part of it goes bad, I'm not going to have wasted a bunch of time painting stuff that ultimately wasn't successful. So I've got enough of it to go that I think we're good now. I'm going to do a little silver pass in here, and then we'll be ready to glue this in. Once this is glued in, I can glue and I say glue, I mean epoxy. I can glue the top down and the head in. Now I've also been working on the pallets and the lower jaw, and I've got a first pass on these. I want to do obviously a red or pinkish red wash on these to bring out some contrast, and then go in and touch the teeth with a white. Again, that is something that I can do once the shark is together.
I kind of have to jam this in here before I do the final painting on it, because it takes some manhandling to get it in. Let's see, I think this is supposed to go in from the front. Yeah, it's supposed to go in from the front. So it goes in like that. But then I can do the white teeth afterwards. Okay, so I've dirtied this down some more, and that's ready to go. I'm letting that dry. I did a red wash over the gums of the shark, and now it's important to note at this point that we are not trying to, I mean, there's a difference between duplicating an actual shark and duplicating or trying to duplicate the filming prop. The filming prop was crude in very many respects. Of course, it had a whole open side, so I'm not really concerned about not seeing seams on the inside. I mean, I'll even put tiny duct tape in there if I think it'll look good. On the outside is where you want to make sure there are no seams, like where the neck joins the rest of the body. On the outside, you want that nice and smooth. Whether there's a joint on the inside, I don't care. That's part of the prop. Like I said, I've got the wash over the teeth. Now, you might think that that's not necessarily natural, and it's not. I'm going to put a light coat. I'm going to spray a light coat over top of that to mist it back down. But even at that point, it's going to be a little bloodier than maybe real sharks, because it is the heightened prop. So the teeth might be whiter. They look maybe a little bit too perfect because it is the prop. It is not an actual shark. I'll whiten the teeth, maybe artificially so, as I guess is what I'm trying to say. It'll look a little bit more heightened than maybe a natural shark, and that's fitting. That's the essence of the movie prop. Is it was a little bit more heightened and character driven than an actual shark in the wild. Right, I am back from lunch. I went to the Rockler Woodworking Company supply store, and I picked up the deep pour resin and some tinting, some dyes to make it the right color. So I have to go to the hardware store and pick up some measuring cups and some mixers and stuff like that there, and then I'll be ready to get into some real trouble. But I had to order the release agent for the resin, or for the mold. They did not have any more in stock. That is being sent to my house directly, so I'm not going to touch any of that until I've got the proper release agent to spray inside that mold. Now the thing I'm going to do right now is kind of finish up this framework and get it ready to go inside the body of the shark. I have sanded the legs off of this so that it is sitting at the angle that I wish to sit it at. I built it straight up, but I want it to sit at an angle. So this is ready to be painted, and with some dark iron, and maybe put some rusting on top of that. Same thing with this piece that goes on top of it, but I will not be gluing anything. Obviously, I'll be using the pin here to go inside the wheel. I need to add a lot more gubbage to this. I need to add cables and that kind of stuff. But this will be ready to be attached to that part of the framework. So let's put that to the side and finish this up so that I can get it attached inside of here. Okay, I think we're getting ready to maybe close it up for today. Might come back to a little bit tonight, but mostly we're done. I've got this much of the body taped and glued and epoxied together. We're going to let that set up for a good long while and then take the clamps off of it. Working on the fleshy bits of the mouth. Got that. I'm going to let that dry and then come back, maybe put another coat of white on the teeth. Got a primer coat on this before we can do any of this, but this is starting to look good. you imagine that's coming along quite nicely. We'll do some white underneath here, obviously. And the last bit is the gantry. I've got the black on that, or the semi-gloss black on that. I'm going to do some dark iron on this before we close up for today. Dark iron and maybe some rust on that to dress it up. But yeah, I mean, I said all along, once I got started on putting the shark together, it was going to go together pretty quickly. Here are the guts and everything down the gullet there. And of course the big news is getting out to the supply store and getting the resin and the tints for that. So we've got a lot done today. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, and I want to step away from Bruce today because I want to get into the other things I'm working on this week. But before I do that, I'm going to be in a great place to set them aside if I can get 2 more things done. This, of course, there's your profile right there. The jaws, no pun intended. I've got the lower jaw, lower palate glued into the lower jaw. I've got to glue in the upper palate yet, and I want to do that with some 1-minute epoxy and really seal that area in there, and then I can be in a better position to putty this seam here. And then I want to attach it to here and have that seam curing. Then I can putty that seam as well. Now I've gone around and sanded all of the work I did yesterday, and I'm going to paint over that just to see how much more of that I need to touch up. But I think I'll wait until I've got the head on and then touch it up all at once rather than try to do it piecemeal. I'm happy with what's going on in here. I know it looks kind of sloppy and kind of makeshift, but that's not wrong for what the look that I'm going for. And then of course this will attach over top of it. So it's coming along. It's coming along quickly. The next big showy pieces are these things right here. So let's take care of all of this, and then I can kind of mask that off while I am painting the grays and the white that has to happen around here. All right, the shark is not working, but the shark is complete. All of the pieces are attached to the actual shark part of it, not necessarily to the guts of it. But we've got a head, we've got a lower jaw, we've got this ugly seam here. This has been 1 minute epoxied all the way around. I'm going to let that cure, and then we'll come back later today and we will use the epoxy sculpt and we will blend that in like we did up in here and around this other seam that we did yesterday. These have dried real nicely. There's still some gap in here that I want to fill in, but I want to wait and do all of this and then spray it and then see where our final gaps are. I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done right in through here, but I think he's looking good. Get a close look at that face, because you're not going to see it a lot. It's going to be in a downward motion like this, but for the first time we can really see how all of these pieces are going to be relating to each other without having to very clumsily hold it up in one hand and try to hold all the pieces together. Well, it's still kind of clumsy, but this piece goes on here next, and then we could start stuffing this with a bunch of wires and tubes and such. But that's going to go like this and then down into the water. Welcome back, everybody. It's time for the Wednesday morning shark report. I have sprayed a coat of gray over all of the epoxy sculpt and putty that I put on the seams yesterday so that I could see what still needs to be dressed up. I'm happy with a lot of that. I think this fold of flesh worked really well that I sculpted in. I can see some bits in here that need to be sanded down. I like what happened here with the fat that I put in there. Put in some conscious folds of flesh there. And I can see here some of this needs to be sanded down now. And probably the most egregious is this area right up in here. but I can see that now. I didn't necessarily see it for what it was yesterday when I was putting the putty in. This is a seam here that I am going to try to sand a bit and see if I can make it look like a fold of flesh rather than it being the obvious seam. But I'm very happy with how this turned out in the long run. This area up in here is particularly on my mind because of this seam right here that I've got to address. But I'm going to take some aggressive sandpaper to the epoxy sculpt, try to keep away from the face, but sand some of the putty work that I did yesterday. Maybe put another coat of gray on it and see how it's looking, and then we'll go in and start laying in the whites and the actual top colors. Okay, kids, it's Friday evening, about dinner time. I am getting ready to do the first resin pour, and I have determined that the only way to keep me from fiddling with resin after I've poured it is to be sleeping through most of it. So I'm going to do this somewhere where I can let it go overnight, and then tomorrow will be the first time I take a look at it. But I'm going to pour the first layer in. The first layer will be the darkest colored layer. It'll be mostly brown with a touch of blue in it. I'm trying to recreate the murky water in New England, not the tropical blue water. So it's going to be murky, ugly water. I have already sprayed this liberally with release agent, mold release. I used a lot because I want to make sure I can get this thing out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour basically a pint in, which should bring it up to about 3/4 of an inch to an inch tall. Then I'm going to sink this, sink the gantry in, and let that be curing. Let that be hardening inside there. I'm going to do a little thing here to hold it in place to keep it from moving around. And then the next layer that I pour on top of it will be slightly lighter in color. And that's when the once this is cured in, then I can attach the shark and the wheel to it. But right now, this much is going to go in, and then the shark goes in before the next round of resin goes in. So I've got the resin measured out. I am stalling right now because I am nervous about doing this. The resin is, I've got the part A. It's a 3-to-1 resin mix. I've got part A in the kitchen in the measuring cup ready to go. I'm going to put part 2 or part B onto it, mix it, slowly add the coloring. I've done some test shots of the color, and I need to know, I'm going to do it very gradually so that it does not go too dark. And then we will pour it in here. Okay, so I exaggerated. I've got the first set mixed. It's right here. I'm going to pour it into there, and then I'm going to set the gantry down in it. I've got the mixing paddle here just to help scrape the sides. Let me see if I can get I need to get a rag or something to set that on to keep it clean. I'll set it on this piece of plastic to keep it clean. And here we go. Now this has got all kinds of bubbles in it. Hopefully they will all come to the surface in a certain amount of time. Oh yeah, this is all pouring out really nicely here. I will wipe down the inside of this measuring cup so that nothing remains on the inside of it. More or less bought these to be disposable anyway, but not planning on being overly wasteful. Let's get the last bits of this in here. This doesn't have quite as many fumes as I was afraid it was going to have. That's nice because I'm leaving this in the dining room to do its business. I will probably cover it with a
towel or something just to keep my nosiness away from it. Plus to keep the fumes down. Okay, we got that. Set this over here for right now. Okay, we've got, now I've got a level on this. I know that that is level. I can see the bubbles coming up here. This is just me playing around. I went and got a lighter because I'm not going to do a blowtorch on this thing to blowtorch the bubbles out, but I thought maybe I could do a lighter. Have a lighter touch with it. Okay, so I just got the big boy out because the that lighter wasn't cutting it. I got the propane torch out, and I just torched the top layer of bubbles. But we're gonna let that sit, and right now I have carefully measured where this needs to go, and it needs to go right here. So we're gonna set that in here, and we're gonna weight it so that it doesn't float away like I have seen some things do. We're not gonna touch this. We're gonna throw a towel over it, like I said, and that's gonna keep everything in place. I can see millions of bubbles coming to the surface and popping. It's like a effervescent soda almost. And that's going to continue through the course of the curing here. That's why we use this really slow curing stuff. But we've got that mucky green color. And then the job for me next time is to do whatever I'm going to do color wise. I have to come close to that. I don't want to see an obvious band in the resin, although that might happen. It's my first time after all. I may not be able to get another color similar to that. So we're going to let that sit, and the next time you see it will be tomorrow. Now I don't expect it to be cured tomorrow. It's supposed to take 72 hours. We'll come back to it in 12 hours and maybe add some more resin to it, or at least see, we'll check it again in the morning and see how it looks. Okay, it's time for the Saturday morning resin report. You'll see that the mold is empty again. What happened, you would say? Lou, what happened? Well, what happened was a very basic error, and I was able to luckily correct it before it got too much further. This sat all night, got nice and hard. I was test fitting the Shark on it this morning and realized, even though I had set the crane right about there, that it was crowded too far to that side. I needed to cheat it to this side so that the rest of the Shark has plenty of room. I can't just set it in the center and then have the Shark be centered, because I forgot about the offset. I want the Shark centered, but the crane has to be offset to that. So I need to push it closer to this edge, and also I need to push it back some because it was closer to the front. It's the kind of stuff you're never gonna, you can test it all you want until the rubber meets the road. You're never gonna be sure. So I realized I was still in a stage where I could correct that, and I could also correct the darkness of the water, because I thought it was a little too dark after I had poured it in. So turned it upside down, banged it out. Not easy to remove. It came out in pieces. I don't care. I wasn't being particularly gingerly about it, but I did learn two very valuable lessons. One, to really plaster this thing with the release agent. I thought I had sprayed on quite a lot, and I could have stood to put more in there, because I don't know how much worse it's going to be once this whole thing is full. I'm going to have to make myself content with the idea that I might have to destroy the mold to get it out. I might have to cut it away from the block, which is something I was prepared to do, but that might be more of a necessity than I thought. So
The other thing that I learned was this stuff dries. I mean, this is nice and clear on the bottom. I'm not going to have to sand that if that's the way it's going to come out. I'm not going to have to sand that at all. I'm going to have to do a little bit of repair on the gantry, but that's it. I mean, hey Wayne, if you want a Superman crystal, I will save a bit of this and you can make your Superman crystal out of that. Here is the big piece that came out. I mean, it's when you put light behind it, it's quite nice. But I'm going to save a big chunk of this because it's going to help me. I'm going to try to paint the bottom of it and see if I can make the bottom disappear, or what's going to happen once I put a piece of felt on that. But look at how clean that is. That's beautiful. So what I need to do is I need to cut the gantry away from this chunk. I will take it to the bandsaw and just slice it away, clean it up as much as I can, and then do this all again with a lighter resin and have this more appropriately positioned in the mold where it's supposed to be. So yeah, I lost 12 hours, but it's better off I find this out now than plus this is all this took was 12 hours. I know they say you're supposed to let it go for days and to let it really set up, but this is and it came out, I mean, once I got the chunks out, it came out really nice. So I'm gonna go back to scratch, but I'm gonna remove this from the block that it's in. This is the most expendable part of the entire build. I could rebuild this in an afternoon if I needed to. So I'm going to try to rescue it first, see if I can save it. If I can't, I'll rebuild it. If I can, I'll reuse it. It's as simple as that. But I'll hang on to these pieces as lessons learned. Okay, so I've got the gantry cleaned back out. Need to touch the paint up on that a bit, but we're ready to go another round on it. Let me, like I said, let me clean up the smudges and put some new paint on it. The good news is the resin stuck to it like a charm. Didn't seem to boil the paint off of it. I was afraid of that happening. That didn't seem to happen. Yeah, this will be ready to sink back down in the round 2 of the resin. Here is the other big chunk that I've saved. I'm going to let this harden, use it for experimenting, because I want to figure out how to do the effect of the top of the water. I've seen people take just a Dremel and a one of those carving bits and just carve little waves in here. So this will give me something to practice on. So nothing is ever wasted. It's always a good lesson. And I'll paint this up, and we'll be ready for the second go round with a little more confidence this time, I think. Here we are on pour number 2, or pour number 1 the second time. I have made up a much lighter color of resin. I have shifted the crane back into the side here so that the shark will be more centered. And let me go get a chunk of the original resin so you can see how much lighter this is. Okay, here's a shard of the original so you can see how much lighter this is. It's still got the green cast to it because it's, you know, the water's off of Nantucket. It's not the Caribbean. So we're going to, this looks better already. I'm going to stop moving that around. But I'm going to cover this, and we're going to come back to it in 12 hours and see how it does. I'm just going to cover that up to knock the smell down. I see the bubbles coming up. It's percolating like the last one did, and I've already used the torch to do the surface bubbles. But take a look at this. This is how this set up, and there is nary a bubble in there. That's clear as, well, not clear as glass because it's tinted, but it doesn't have any of the bubbling problem I was worried about. So that's the difference between deep pour resin and the other. It was very, very well mixed. I mixed it for about 5 minutes with the mixing paddle on my drill, and then I mixed it for about 4 minutes
put the color in, mixed it as I went. I put a little bit by little bit on the color to make sure I didn't go too dark. And between each time I mixed it again. So it's had a good, I would say a good 8-10 minutes of agitation. And I can see the effervescence of it, of the little bubbles coming to the top and popping. So we're going to let that sit. And I noticed this is a lot clearer than it was. That's part of all the bubbles coming up. As they come up, the resin itself becomes less cloudy. So again, like I said, we're going to let this sit and we'll come back to it later. Well, greetings everybody. It's Sunday. It's Sunday of what I'm calling my Shark Week. This is the single most important day, the most butt-puckery day of the entire build. I've got to put all of these pieces together. Now what is going to happen is I am going to add the shark to the top of the gantry, pose his final angle, and then mark on the top of the resin here with a Sharpie where I need to drill holes. Now I'm not going to drill all the way through to the bottom of the mold. That would be counterproductive in more ways than one. But what I want to do is mount or drill holes just under the surface so that I can tack the hoses in place. I'm going to be encapsulating them and the nose of the shark with the clear resin, but I want to have the look of some sort of tension on those hoses, so I want them to be as straight as possible going down into the murky green here. So what I'd like to do is first put the shark on the pulley. We're going to do that. Now this resin has cured up overnight. We've got about 18 hours on it now, I think. I have lost count. But we are going to put the pivot or the hub, the axle in the come on, all the way through. Come on, you can do it. There you go. All the way through. Come on. All the way through. There we go. All the way through. Now, I want the shark to sit here, but I want his nose to be just up from that last bit of resin that we've poured. So I want to use this side. I also want him to be straight like that. So I am going to, let me see. What I'd like to do is put something under him that goes the whole way, that will hold him right at the right height, and attach that straight down like that. Now I think I can do better than this paintbrush. So let me get some popsicle sticks out and glue them up. I'm going to set him up at this angle for right now. Okay, here we go. Now I'll tell you, I am very nervous about this setup. What I've got is I've got the shark in the position. I've got bracing holding him more or less centered and square. I've got this clamp here because that's giving me the right height. I've got him pushed over. His nose is starting to go into the soft resin that's in the bottom there. I'm going to pour one more layer of resin, probably not the final top layer. I want to pour one medium layer in. Mixing the color of that's going to be important. But what I wanted to do is I will let it sit for 12 hours and it's going to lock the rest of the shark in place. Then I can remove all of this folderol that's holding it up, holding it in position, and then pour the final top layer, which should bring it to the top of the mold. Hopefully, if I've got that much left, it'll bring it to the top of the mold. Okay, he's cinched down. I think we're ready to pour. This is a soupy gar mixture that is lighter than what's underneath it, but it is not pretty. And we're just going to start right here. We've got a lot riding on this layer. I'm hoping that the paint won't bubble up underneath it. Sorry, I don't mean to be blocking the camera, but right now I'm not thinking about the camera. Okay, that was another 4 cups of material. Or no, yeah, 3 cups. And we get enough to do one more pour, and then we're going to let it sit again. I think we've lost our stiff line here, but that may have been asking for too much anyway. Don't want to bump anything. This straight piece of tubing is the least of my concerns. Matter of fact, I think I want to cut a little length of that off and just let it hang. Okay, Bruce is nose down in the resin. We're going to let this sit for a couple days now. Let that get clear and clean, and we're going to look at the shark here. It might need a little bit of adjusting before we let it sit, so let's do that and then let it be. Okay, it's getting late into Sunday evening. This has gotten a lot clearer. It was a lot foamier and more well, hard to see through when I first put it in, but I'm starting to see it pull away from the top of the mold. I can tap on it now. It's not gooey like it was the last time I checked. It's also not warm anymore. The exothermic reaction apparently is done for the most part. I am still going to leave it in the jig overnight. I'll come back in the morning and I will take it out of this, but for right now we're going to leave it setting up. It's not doing anybody any harm this way, and we'll check on it again in the morning. Now the next big thing I expect to be an issue is getting it out of the mold. I am perfectly willing to sacrifice this mold. That was always the plan, but if I can save it, we'll try to do that. I know you usually have to bang on these things to get the mold to come out, and I don't want to have to do that with a delicate model sticking out of it. So we'll revisit this in the morning. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday. It's Shark Week. It's been about 20 hours since I put this big boy into the drink, and I'm getting ready to remove the last of the support structure. I don't need any of this anymore. He's certainly not going to go anywhere now. Let's get rid of these last bits of restraint here. Everything has done its job. And the next big task is going to be removing him from the mold. Now, that's going to happen eventually, but not today. I'm going to give it another day or so before I try to remove it. Like I said, I'm perfectly willing to sacrifice this mold because I don't want to do a lot of banging like they do when they are removing, bar tops and tables from these molds. The molds can take a lot of abuse, but the shark inside is what I'm worried about. So I'm just removing some of these temporary wires that I had holding some of these bits in place. Everything here is all nicely ensconced. I like the surface detail. I think that's nice and watery. I was worried about having to add that on there, but I'm quite enjoying that. I think we are in a good place. I'm really curious to see how much of the face I'm going to be able to see from the sides.
I can see down, excuse me, I can see down into the top of the shark, but I obviously can't see anything from the side, so I'm curious as to how that, how visible the face is going to be. But we're going to let that sit for a while. He's nice and straight in the mold. I like that. Not much else I can say about it at this point. And notice that the sides of the mold are kind of curving in a bit. That was probably due to the curing of the resin, but no problem there. I'm not really concerned all that much. I probably could have put a brace there to keep those sides parallel, but I'm really not having an issue with that at this point. We'll see how the edges of this need to be dressed up once I get it out of the mold. If it's like this piece that came out of the bottom, the bottom was already very smooth and the sides were very smooth, so that's the best case scenario. I don't have to do a lot of sanding to clean up those edges, but we're gonna let it sit, and this is Monday, like I said, and we'll come back to this in a day or so and see how it looks. Okay, real big news today. Yeah, out of the mold. I was poking at the mold and starting to bang around to see if I could loosen any of the sides, and before you know it, I just turned it upside down and started banging on it, and it came loose. So sorry I didn't have the camera out while it happened, but it is out now, and we've got basically a big old ugly ice cube here. This is some defect from the pour. I'm seeing lots of gaps and air bubbles in the pour where I didn't, when I poured it, I didn't go down with a stick and like vibrate out all the pores. I can still see lots of hazy bubbles that got trapped in there that have not quite, well, they're there. They're never coming out. But it's murky as it's gonna be. I wanted this to be visible to a certain extent, but I didn't necessarily want to, you know, completely clear through there. I did want murky water, so I think on that respect I am successful. We're gonna let this cure out in the air. We're gonna let the air hit the sides of it now to finish curing. It wasn't getting any more air from the sides trapped in the mold like it was, so about the only thing I didn't do was run a vacuum on the resin, but I don't have one of those, so it's as good as it's going to get. But I think it serves the purpose perfectly. I'm going to clean these sides up a little bit. I'll have to do some sanding on that. I was expecting that. The top is perfect. I'm going to leave that alone. The front and the sides. See, right at the join of the original first pour to the second pour, that's where I've got most of my fault, and I think I laid too much time between those pours. That's why I didn't get a good, a very good joint there. May have to fill that in with some clear epoxy, see if I can minimize some of those holes. But I'm for my first deep resin pour, I'm very happy. A little bit nasty back there too, but I'm very happy. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 23rd of June, which more importantly means I've got a week basically to get this finished and ready for the reveal on the 4th of July. So that makes this week Shark Week. Now luckily I am mostly done. The last thing that I need to do really is to dress up this edge around here. Now this has been out of the mold for, let's see, Wednesday, 5 days. It's been a week since I've poured this. So this is good and solid. I took it out of the mold on Tuesday, maybe a day or so early, but I got antsy and I wanted to make sure it would come out okay. If it didn't, I wanted to have time to re-pour it if something horrible was going to go wrong. But it didn't. It came out okay. Well, it came out okay with some bumps and bruises on it. And that's what we're going to look at today. Now, because this is my first, and to my knowledge, or to my planning, my only deep resin pour, I didn't invest a lot in tools. Can be a very expensive hobby. This is almost akin to 3D printing. That's not a cheap hobby to get into. So because I'm not making this a lifestyle, I'm just making this one mold. I have not followed all of the rules and tenets and practices. This is probably I should be called the wrong way to pour resin, because I followed the basic gist of everything. I didn't measure the amount of ounces of resin that I used. It was a 3-to-1 mix, so I used a measuring cup and I did 3 measures, and I put the 4th measure on top of it. I didn't balance everything out with, you know, a weightogram, a scale. I didn't do any of that. I mixed it up with a paddle mixer, which did nothing but introduce a metric ton of bubbles into everything. Like I said, I watched a few videos, got the general gist of how to do this, and then I just tore into it myself. And I think for an amateur first-time pour, it came out okay. But today, I am going to do something about dressing up these sides, sanding them down, probably grinding these corners around, something to make it look a little better, a little less ragged around the edges. Now, I also did not invest in a million different grades of sandpaper. I'm not interested in getting it up buffed to a mirror shine. I got some 80, some 120, some 220, and some 320. And then everything above that, I may try with some of the sanding sponges and stuff that I have. But then I plan on just buffing it out from there. I'm not going up to the 1,000 and 2,000 grit papers. So I need to take this out on the deck, because the one thing I do know, and I will do, is that you need a respirator when you are sanding resin. And I use the respirator that I use when I am sanding cast resin, or 3D printed resin when I'm sanding that. So I'm going to go out on the deck, because it is 1,000,000 degrees out today, and I'm going to do some preliminary sanding. I'm going to leave the top as it is because I think it's beautiful. Also going to leave the bottom as it is because I think that's mostly beautiful. But I'm going to try my hand at sanding around these sides. So the next time you see this, I will be bringing it back in, because I expect it to be sandy, cloudy, dusty, sweaty work, and you don't need to see me do that. Folks, here we are. I never thought it would come to it, but we're on the last day of the Bruce build. And hopefully I need to get this video shot and put together and sent up to Wayne so he can have it for the reveal. One last thing I want to do is I want to cut some decorative grooves into the sides of this block to make it look more like water. To do that, I've got the drill, I've got a grinding disc, and we're just going to do some freehand stuff. Now, even though I am outside, I am still going to be putting a respirator on, because we're going to be kicking up a lot of resin dust, and I wish to keep it out of my lungs. So that's why I'm talking now before I put the respirator on, because you won't be able to understand me once I do. And we're just going to do a little freehand, just, you know, see where the wind takes me. I don't have any big dramatic curtain, so I'm just going to go from here to there. And that is the result of Bruce. Let's just get in a little closer so you can see how she turned out, or how he turned out. The guts inside, and my first ever attempt at deep pour resin pouring. Now, it was not ever intended to be a crystal clear Caribbean blue water. It was meant to be the murky waters off of Nantucket. So I think I accomplished that, particularly for a first time deep pour resin. But let me put the shark up on the rotating turntable here, and we'll get a better look at it. There we go. Shark off to that side. And there's a special added feature that wasn't intended, and I was never going to show it off this way. But I noticed that during the pour, that if I tipped it upside down, let's get this out of the way, and tilted it up, you can see the little sharky face right in there. There you go. I was intending on putting a piece of felt onto the bottom of this so that it would not stick to the table, so it has something to glide around on. But I want to cut a hole in it so that you can see that face if you turn it upside down. That's the reveal.